They laughed. Not a nervous chuckle, not a strategic dismissal, a genuine, full-bodied laugh echoing through the concrete interior of the U.S. Pacific Fleet's underground operations room at Pearl Harbor. The kind of laugh officers share when the enemy does something so absurd, so laughably ineffective, that it feels like a gift in the middle of a brutal war. On the table lay black and white reconnaissance photos, tiny silhouettes, barely visible against the ocean. Japanese Ko-hyoteki class midget submarines, 46-ton steel cylinders crewed by only 2 men, packing a pair of torpedoes so notoriously unreliable that even Japanese commanders joked about them misfiring more often than they hit anything. One U.S. intelligence officer tapped the photo with the back of his pencil and scoffed. "These things, they can't even scratch a destroyer." Another chimed in, flipping through reports from earlier battles, Guadalcanal, Santa Cruz, the failed attacks during the Aleutians. "Every time they launch these tin cans, we drag them up from the seabed in pieces." In Washington, analysts wrote long memos insisting Japan's midget subs were tactically insignificant. In Australian ports, Allied sailors posed for pictures beside captured hulls like they were trophies. Even in Tokyo, many senior officers considered them a desperate, last-ditch vanity project dreamed up by stubborn admirals who refused to accept reality. But not everyone was laughing. A classified U.S. Navy assessment, hidden beneath a pile of more comfortable reports, contained a single ominous line. Enemy midget sub capability remains unquantified. Surprise attack potential moderate to high. Nobody wanted to read it. Nobody wanted to imagine that Japan could still surprise the world after years of exhausting island warfare, endless casualties, starving garrisons, and the steady roar of American industrial might carving its way across the Pacific. But on a cold morning in 1945, as U.S. forces prepared the final stages of the push toward Tokyo, a handful of Japanese officers were preparing something bold, precise, and quietly terrifying. For months, the U.S. Navy had dismissed these tiny submarines as a laughable relic of Japan's early war arrogance. They were about to regret it, because the Japanese midget submarine force, battered, ignored, underfunded, and nearly destroyed, was about to achieve something no one saw coming. And deep beneath the surface of Tokyo Bay, 2 men in a cramped steel tube were preparing to change the course of the war's final act. Long before Tokyo Bay became a fortress, the idea of a miniature submarine was born in the mind of a determined Japanese engineer, Lieutenant Commander Kishida Koichi. He believed that the future of naval warfare didn't lie only in massive battleships or aircraft carriers. He envisioned precision, stealth, and shock, weapons that struck from the shadows without warning. His solution? A manned torpedo with just enough size to carry real firepower. The Imperial Japanese Navy liked the idea but didn't fully understand it. Japan's naval thinking in the 1930s revolved around massive surface duels, proud steel giants exchanging shells in glorious fleet battles inspired by Tsushima. And yet, the Navy quietly approved the creation of a Special Attack Submarine Unit, a secret program hidden within the naval budget under the ambiguous label, Research Vessel Fund. The engineers built prototypes in underground shipyards near Kure. Welding sparks lit the cave walls as workers crafted hulls so compact that crew members had to crawl inside on their knees. The first midget subs leaked. Their batteries overheated. Their controls jammed. Their torpedoes misfired. Japan's admirals hated them, but the younger officers loved them. To them, the midget subs represented something modern, a chance for Japan to strike American warships where they felt safest, anchored inside their own harbors. By 1941, 5 of these submarines waited silently aboard the mother submarines, approaching Oahu. The attack on Pearl Harbor was supposed to be their debut, a daring penetration of the harbor's defenses, destroying battleships at anchor as the air assault roared overhead. It didn't go as planned. 3 were sunk before firing. 1 ran aground. 1 vanished entirely, only discovered in 2002, still holding its unexploded torpedoes. To the outside world, this failure cemented their reputation as Japan's toy submarines. A joke, a waste of resources. Proof that the Imperial Navy was becoming desperate. But the truth was more complicated. The crews who operated these midget submarines were not amateurs. They trained relentlessly in the inland sea, running underwater obstacle courses, map-timed navigation exercises, and torpedo firing drills in darkness. Many came from elite naval families. Some volunteered knowing full well their missions were often suicidal. These men weren't engineers testing flawed prototypes. They were determined warriors, fighting inside metal coffins barely wider than their shoulders. And by 1945, with Japan cornered, bombed, starving, and desperate, these submariners were given a mission so dangerous that even they hesitated. A mission in the heart of Tokyo Bay. Tokyo Bay in 1945 was not just a harbor, it was a fortress. Nets and mines crisscrossed the water like an underwater spiderweb. Patrol boats prowled in constant arcs. Sonar stations listened through the depths, trained to detect anything larger than a tuna. The Americans believed nothing could enter the bay unseen. They believed the Japanese were finished. They believed midget submarines, even if launched, would be trapped and destroyed long before they neared a target. But Japan was preparing something no intelligence report predicted. In the final months of the war, the midget submarine program underwent a transformation. The engineers had secretly developed a faster, quieter, more maneuverable variant, the Kairyū class. Small, sharp-nosed, and deadly, it carried a 600 kilograms explosive charge in its bow, essentially turning the entire submarine into a guided torpedo. They weren't built to survive. They were built to kill. Inside a camouflaged cave along the Yokosuka coastline, dozens of these new submarines waited like steel sharks frozen in the dark. Crews slept beside them. Mechanics worked silently under lantern light, tightening bolts, calibrating gyros, whispering final prayers. And among those crews, one pair stood out. Lieutenant Iwase Tadashi and Petty Officer Yoshio Kanzaki, two men who had trained together since the early days of the war. They had survived depth charge attacks in the Solomons. They had lost friends in the Marianas. Now they were assigned to Kairyū No. 43, a slender black dagger of steel only 54 feet long. Their mission briefing was simple. Penetrate Tokyo Bay. Destroy the largest Allied vessel available. Simple did not mean possible. Iwase traced the map with his finger. Mines, nets, patrol routes, water depth, tidal flow. He knew every inch of the bay was designed to kill intruders. But he also knew something else. The Americans never expected a Japanese submarine to attack Tokyo again. Surprise was their weapon. And so, at 2:17 a.m., under a moon obscured by drifting clouds, the cave doors rolled open. The sea outside was black and still. A thin mist clung to the water like ghost breath. Kairyū No. 43 slid forward, its electric motor humming softly. Iwase climbed inside first, folding himself into the cramped control space. Kanzaki followed, securing the hatch above them. The metal locked with a hollow echo, the sound of two men sealing themselves inside fate. The submarine eased into the bay. Above them, Japanese patrol boats pretended to watch the water. In truth, fuel shortages had crippled operations. Many vessels sat at anchor, conserving what little remained. Searchlights flickered weakly. Sonar operators, exhausted and underfed, struggled to maintain focus. Iwase and Kanzaki moved like ghosts. Every few minutes, Kanzaki whispered depth readings. Iwase adjusted the trim tanks by feel alone, navigating the underwater terrain with an instinct honed over years of silent warfare. They were close, too close. Above them loomed the silhouettes of American destroyers, cruisers, and support vessels assembling for the final assault on the Japanese homeland. The bay was crawling with targets. Iwase tightened his jaw. Soon, he would choose one. And soon, the Americans who laughed at Japan's toy submarines would discover that small does not mean harmless. Small means invisible. Small means unexpected. Small means deadly. 2:54 a.m. The water inside Tokyo Bay was unnervingly calm, a flat, black mirror broken only by the faint hum of distant engines. For Lieutenant Iwase Tadashi and Petty Officer Yoshio Kanzaki, the silence felt unnatural, as if the entire bay were holding its breath. The Kairyū No. 43 glided just above the seabed, barely clearing the silt. Its electric motor whispered, its instruments glowed with a dim red hue, illuminating the tense lines of Iwase's face. Above them floated an armada. American destroyers, transports, repair ships, ammunition barges, all gathering for what would become the final phase of operations near the Japanese mainland. Many of these vessels carried fuel. Others were loaded with munitions stacked like dominoes. A single spark could turn any one of them into a floating inferno. It was exactly the kind of target the Kairyū had been built to destroy. But first, they had to get close. Iwase adjusted course by a few degrees, guiding the submarine under a cluster of anchored destroyers. Kanzaki pressed his ear to the hull. He could hear the steady thumping of an American ship's generator, a deep, rhythmic pulse like a metallic heartbeat. The men exchanged a glance. This close, discovery meant immediate death. They ascended slightly. The pressure gauge ticked upward. The water's density changed around the hull. At 60 feet, Kanzaki spotted it, a massive shape emerging from the darkness ahead. A fleet oiler. The USS Mississippi had been sunk months earlier by a Japanese Kairyū, but the Americans had brought in replacements. This one, sitting right in the center of the anchorage, brimmed with thousands of gallons of fuel. Iwase stared at it through the periscope just long enough to confirm. This was the target. He whispered, "Prepare the charge." Kanzaki's hands trembled slightly as he armed the submarine's explosive bow. A 600 kilograms warhead, equivalent to a flying torpedo, was now live. Once deployed, there would be no retreat, no turning back. The Kairyū was designed to strike like a spear tip and sacrifice itself in the explosion. The water quivered. Above them, an American patrol craft passed overhead, the rumble of its propellers slicing through the calm. Its sonar operator lazily pinged the water every few minutes, never imagining a Japanese submarine could be silently threading the mine-infested depths below. Iwase timed the pattern. 3 pings apart. A small gap. Then he moved. The Kairyū surged forward. Slow. Controlled. Every vibration mattered. Every inch mattered. At the 90-meter mark, Iwase slowed the sub until it practically hovered in the water. He could see the oiler's hull above him, a looming wall of steel. Kanzaki fed him depth and distance readings in a soft, steady cadence like a heartbeat. 60 meters, 45, 30, 25. Iwase's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Release depth by half. The Kairyū rose like a shark preparing its final strike. 12 meters, 10, 9. Iwase's finger hovered over the final control, the mechanism that would lock them into their terminal run. 6 meters. Then Kanzaki froze. A sound. A new sound. Sonar, active, sharp, rapid. An American destroyer had shifted course, sweeping the bay with fresh attention. For a moment, the inside of the Kairyū felt too small, too fragile. Kanzaki's breath trembled in the stale. "Iwase," he whispered. But the lieutenant didn't stop. He looked at his partner, and nodded. 5 meters. Go. The Kairyū darted upward. The destroyer's sonar ping swept past, but just a few feet above the submarine's stern. Had they been a second slower, a meter higher, they would have been detected instantly. Iwase's voice was steady. "Brace." The submarine aligned itself perfectly with the American oiler's hull. Kanzaki triggered the final sequence. A metallic click echoed inside the confined steel tube, their last irreversible step. Iwase gripped the controls. Kanzaki closed his eyes. The charge detonated. The explosion was not a boom, it was a deep, concussive roar that seemed to tear the sea open. A shockwave rippled outward through the bay, slamming into nearby destroyers. The oiler erupted into a column of fire, sending flaming fuel raining across the water like molten rain. American sailors scrambled across decks, shouting orders, pointing, panicking. What few realized, until it was too late, was that the explosion had torn through a line of ammunition crates loaded onto a supply barge nearby. The second explosion dwarfed the first. A fireball shot into the air, lighting the night like a rising sun. Shockwaves shattered glass windows in vessels hundreds of meters away. Several ships broke from their moorings entirely, drifting without control in the flaming water. Inside the chaos, alarms blared. Submarine attack. Submarine attack. Submarine inside the bay. The impossible had just happened, and the United States Navy, secure, confident, utterly unworried, suddenly realized it had no idea how many submarines Japan still had. The Kairyū No. 43 never resurfaced. Iwase and Kanzaki vanished beneath the burning water. But their strike changed everything. Within minutes, U.S. commanders executed a full-scale evacuation of the anchorage. Anti-submarine nets were dropped. Patrol vessels began sweeping the bay in frantic loops. Every sonar operator, moments earlier bored and exhausted, was now sweating bullets. The Americans had been caught off guard by a weapon they laughed at. Dawn broke over Tokyo Bay in a pale, smoky haze. The sea was still burning in patches where oil slicks had ignited. The silhouette of the destroyed oiler slumped against the waterline like a wounded giant. Nearby vessels listed from the blast, some half-sunken, others charred beyond recognition. It had been one of the most successful surprise attacks Japan had launched since the early days of the war. But few would ever know. For the Americans, the incident was an embarrassment. Their intelligence division immediately classified the event. Reports were sanitized. Damage estimates were buried in administrative paperwork. No official communique ever acknowledged a Japanese Midget submarine penetrating one of the most heavily defended harbors in the world. Even decades later, survivor testimonies speak of an explosion of unknown origin. But the Japanese knew. In Tokyo, word of the attack spread quietly through naval circles. Senior officers visited the Midget sub training center and bowed their heads. The surviving crews, exhausted, starving, some barely able to stand, felt a surge of pride they hadn't experienced since the war began. They had done the impossible. They had pierced the armor of the most powerful navy on earth. And in the final months of a hopeless war, their strike became more than a tactical victory. It became a symbol of defiance, of sacrifice, of the dangerous truth that even in defeat, Japan's warriors could still sting. After the war, historians would debate the effectiveness of the Kairyū program. Some called it desperation. Others saw it as a precursor to the modern submarine tactics of stealth and asymmetric warfare. But every expert agreed on one thing: the Americans never mocked Midget submarines again. Because the strike inside Tokyo Bay proved a horrifying truth, one the US Navy hoped the world would overlook. Small weapons, dismissed as jokes, often become the ones that slip through the cracks. And those cracks can sink giants. In the silence of the post-war years, Japanese engineers and historians pieced together the last known moments of Kairyū No. 43. The sub never surfaced. Iwase and Kanzaki never returned. Their bodies were never recovered. But their impact, literally and historically, echoed across the Pacific. Today, in a small museum near Yokosuka, an aging plaque honors the Midget sub crews. Inscription is worn, faded, almost forgotten. But its message remains powerful. They fought in darkness, so the homeland might see another dawn. And beyond that plaque stands a restored Kairyū submarine, small, unimpressive to the casual visitor. Children walk past it without noticing. Tourists sometimes laugh at how tiny it is. But those who know its story, those who know what happened in Tokyo Bay, never laugh. Because once, on a dark, silent morning in 1945, toy submarine set the bay on fire. And history is still living with the glow.